So good morning, we are Aurora and Neus, and we are from the Department of Ecology, and today we're going to talk about marine ecology. So ecology studies interactions between the organisms with different species and between these organisms with the environment. So our group is focused mainly on the study of the seagrasses meadows, and we are presenting you two lines of our work. So what are seagrasses? Seagrasses are marine plants which forms extensive vast meadows from 0.5 to 40 meters, and they are like the forest of the sea, so they are very important. They can provide food, shelter, habitat, and nursery areas for many other species. And as a primary producers, they play a very important role in carbon and nutrient cycling in marine environment. So this production enters to the trophic networks by decomposition. But if organic matter is very high, the sediment becomes anoxic. So some bacteria take sulfur instead of oxygen for this decomposition. And one of the final products is sulfite, and this sulfite in high levels can be toxic for the plant. So how does seagrasses can survive on this dark side of sediment? So, well, these plants have mechanisms to face this toxicity. However, they are not alone. They share the habitat with the so-called leucinid bivalves, and leucinid bivalves are small clams that have unique symbiosis with a chemiotrophical bacteria which oxides this toxic sulfide. So we've got here positive interactions between two species, seagrasses and these leucinid bivalves. While seagrasses provides an ideal habitat for the clams, these clams in turn contribute to reduce sulfite in the sediments and reduce the toxicity for the plant. In order to determine the importance of these interactions in our study site, so in Delta del Ebra, we evaluate the abundance of these leucinid bivalves in meadows of the seagrass Cimolocea nodosa, submitted on the different levels of eutrophication. So in our results, what we found was that there was a negative correlation with leucinid bivalves and organic matter. That means that the more organic matter in the sediment, the more eutrophication, the less leucinids. And we find also a positive interactions between these leucinids and different descriptors as root morphology, has the root ramification index. So, to conclude these studies, we can say that what happens in sediments is really important because it gives us information about the functioning of an ecosystem. So, Aurora.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Sorry. The second line that we want to explain to you is also working with sediments. Seagrass meadows are important habitats for carbon sequestration. Okay. Due to its high capacity to store carbon as organic carbon in the sediments. CO2 is one of the main greenhouse gases causing the increase of the global mean temperature and the acceleration of climate change. And since pre-industrial times, the emission of CO2 have increased for at least 40%. In our scientific area, we call blue carbon to the carbon stored by coastal vegetation, that means seagrasses, mangroves, and salt marshes. And seagrasses are estimated to account for the 40%, to store the 40% of this carbon each year. Despite of this, blue carbon and seagrasses are not taken into account in the Kyoto Protocol, but however, there is an increasing interest by governments to quantify the carbon stocks that they have in their countries. How it works, how the seagrass meadows store this carbon in the sediments. Well, This high capacity is a result of the high primary production of these plants. They have a lot of photosynthetic activity. And, sorry, the plant tissues have low decomposition rates. Also, the seagrass meadows can alter the water flow and induce the deposition of the particles which are stored in the water column and store them in the sediment. And the last reason is because there is no fire underwater, so everything that goes to the sediment and is buried there remains there. So we work with Posidonia oceanica. It's a species endemic from the Mediterranean. The organic matter which is stored in the sediments is autochthonous or alloctonous. Autochthonous material is the material from inside the meadow, and the alloctonous material is the material from outside the meadow, which comes from this particle trapping. The autochthonous material, the plant tissues, have low decomposition rates, so when they get to the sediment, they act as a carbon sink, but the alloctonous material have high decomposition rates, and when it arrives to the sediment, is quickly released again. The organic carbon is quickly released again as CO2. So this is the remineralization process. What we study is the influence of the landscape in the proportion of these sources in the organic matter on the sediments. We work with continuous meadows and patchy meadows to study the function of the structure in the proportion of these sources of organic matter, and also we see how the adjacent habitat affect to these sources. We work here in the Mediterranean. We use scuba techniques. Well, we work by diving. And we use geographic informatic systems to characterize and to localize our landscapes. And we use stable isotopes techniques and Bayesian mixing models to determine the sources of this organic matter. Well, a summary of our results is we have seen that when the size of the meadow decreases, there is an increase of the alloctonous sources. That means that there is more input of the suspended particles of the water column, and a decrease of the plant tissue. So that means more remineralization of the carbon. And well, thank you so much.